If you'd like to go ahead and mute yourself, we will start with our flag pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And our four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you. And Lynn, would you like to take the floor for the invocation?
Thank you. Our businesses call us for new ways of thinking these days and being very innovative and entrepreneurial. Our culture is also calling us to new ways of thinking and new ways of imagining beyond our own viewpoints and perspectives. And that really is what growth is all about, both personally and shares this image for gaining different perspective. How do we in our business, how do we in our personal life? It's been such an incredible joy to also work with Hyun Kim and gain a whole different perspective around something from a different standpoint of race. So how do we do that in other ways?
Lynn, this
John
is
O'Donohue writes.
You're breaking up a bit. I wonder if you could turn off your video to try and save a little bandwidth. Now try. Did you mute yourself?
I had muted myself. Can
Okay.
you hear me okay now?
We can hear you, yes.
Thank you. Growth is all about looking at new ways of doing things and having a new perspective. So John O'Donohue shares with us this image of gaining a new perspective. There's a beautiful complexity of growth within the human soul. In order to glimpse this, it is helpful to visualize the mind as a tower of windows. Sadly, many people remain trapped at the one window, looking out every day at the same scene in the same way. Real growth is experienced when you draw back from that one window, turn, and walk around the inner tower of your soul and see all the different windows that await your gaze. Through these different windows, you can see new vistas of possibility, presence, and creativity. Complacency, habit, and blindness often prevent you from feeling your life. So much depends upon the frame of vision, the window through which you look. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. That was just beautiful. Appreciate it. Well, I hope most of you were able to hear our pre-meeting chatter about the YMCA gardening this weekend. Looks like you guys got a lot done and were able to have the kids help too. Oh, that's a great picture. That's fantastic. How many, Lynn, did you say were from the Arden Hills Shoreview Club?
There were 4 from Shoreview and 5 from Roseville.
That's fantastic. So thank you all for your efforts there. Does anybody else have an announcement today? You'll have to unmute yourself because I wasn't looking at the whole picture. All right, well, I think we have time for happy dollars. So let's take a few minutes and check in with one another here. Well, I'll start. I wanted to give a happy dollar for Optimist Club meeting last Friday. It was very powerful and kind of challenged us to a new level of thinking as leaders. I was actually taking care of my mother at the time, so I kept my camera off, but I was able to really enjoy that. Saw a couple of you guys there too. Come on, you got to get happy. Jan, thank you. Oh, are you muted, Jen? We're not hearing your voice.
I finally found how to unmute. I'm going to give 12 happy dollars for each of the 12 baby ducklings that were born and in our courtyard and are here seen about 2 minutes after they entered the water. And we've had just a joyous 30 days of what is Daisy doing now? And now we know what Daisy did. She did 12 babies. So 12 happy dollars.
Thank you. They're pretty cute. And just a reminder, this money goes to Polio Plus. So this is a great cause. The money that you're giving in gratitude for things going right in your life goes to a good cause. So who else has a happy dollar?
All right. I'm just trying to figure out, oh, here, let's see. I'm just trying to figure out which happy dollars I should give. Of course, there's the weather, there's the baby ducks that I see on the pond near me. And I'll just say that we're heading in the right direction. You know, we're not all fully vaccinated, but we're heading in the right direction in Ramsey County. We're going to vote tomorrow on what our mask policy is going to be. But, you know, I'm just grateful to everyone who's getting vaccinated and just moving us forward in this during this time. So I've got happy dollars for I'll put in happy dollars for those three things.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I've got a happy dollar too, Jenny. Today is the first day. I have a new hire today. She's starting just this morning, and so far, you know, the first 4 hours going really well. But I anticipate great things from her, and happy to have another team member who is filling a vacancy. So important day.
Congratulations.
And I'll put in $5 for the 5 of us who were part of the planting on Saturday.
Thank you, Tom.
Good job.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. And
I don't want to, Deb, I'm not sure I want to put in $1 for this, but maybe I could take $1 out because it's sitting to my when Norway got its independence from Sweden. And that's kind of backwards or something. I suppose I could put in $1.
Ted, I have Kransekaka in a little baggie in my office I've been nibbling on today. So.
Well, I'm gonna do more happy dollars just because Tom said, you know, for the 5 people that planted. I'm just gonna give kudos to the green team. I mean, Lynn has just been leading the charge. David Cray's been picking up everything. Ted Johnson's been working with the Y. The green team, and then our other volunteers that came with us. Tom, you were there on Saturday. It's been really fun, but the three of the members of the green team have been doing a ton of work. I just get to participate in some of the things, but the Ted, David, and Lynn are just doing a ton of work on that. So I just want to give them another shout out. Good job, everyone. And thanks to the volunteers, Tom, and everybody who came on Saturday to help plant.
That's great.
And Galen, Galen's been there too. What am I saying? Galen, I'm seeing him now. He's also been there helping and taking pictures and stuff. So thanks.
Hi, everyone. This is Maria. Sorry about bad hair day today. But anyway, I wanted to also put in 10 happy dollars for a gorgeous day outside. And for not sure how this happened, but all of a sudden, old clients started calling. So I am heading to a very busy summer, which came really as a surprise. Anyway, so thanks. Thank you. And I agree with you, Deb. The speaker last Friday at the Optimist Club was amazing. Mary Jo, I really enjoyed your question. I hope that you know that we all trust you, and we all trust that our governments are making the right decisions. So,
well, thank you. Nice to see you, Maria, and congrats on the clients. That's good news.
I'm taking my video off. The internet is just very poor. So.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody else? Well, then I think we're going to give the floor to Jenny to introduce our speaker today.
Well, I have the pleasure of introducing Major Scott Shelbourn. So Scott has recently joined our club and he's going to give us an update on himself as well as what's going on with the Salvation Army. Thank you.
Share my screen here real quick. All right. Get back to the Zoom there. All right. Well, yeah, it's been a pleasure to join as many meetings as I can with the Rotary Club representing the Salvation Army, but do appreciate you inviting me to speak as well today to tell you a little bit about what the Salvation Army is doing. Just share a little bit about myself. There it goes. Okay. So this is my wife, Jolinda, and myself. We've been married 29 years. And we've been, this June will be with the Salvation Army for 20 years. She was a homemaker before, did some work at doing some aerobics and gym stuff, and she had her own little dance studio before we became Salvation Army officers. And my original career was working with medical electronics and specifically hearing test equipment and such, calibrating that and installing it around the Midwest. Before I felt called to be a Salvation Army officer. She grew up as one of the kids that would go to camp and the youth programs at a Salvation Army, but I met her when I was in college. I belonged to the Theta Chi fraternity, and one of my fraternity brothers played in the band at the Salvation Army. So between her and my friend, they got me involved at the Salvation Army local corps in Omaha, Nebraska. And after a few years, I really felt God was calling me specifically to be a Salvation Army officer. And in the Salvation Army, if you're going to be an officer and you're married, both of you have to buy into it. And so I told my wife, and she said, yeah, you're probably end up going to go in divorced because I am not going to do that. But about a year later, she felt like God was calling her as well. And so we joined up and we took our 4 kids to Chicago, where the training college is, to train to be a Salvation Army officer. I've had several appointments. One of my longest appointment for 7 years was the youth secretary back in Omaha, where I managed the campground, but all the youth activities in South Dakota, Nebraska, and Iowa. And a couple pictures, youth programs, you're always got to dress goofy and stuff. So those are some of my challenges to see how goofy we could dress up. But always a fun time. This is a picture of my 4 kids when my youngest son was graduating, and they're all married now, all spread across the Midwest. The 2 boys in the bottom pictures live in Omaha. My daughter in the top center picture lives in Chicago, and my youngest son and his wife live in Davenport, Iowa. And between all of them, we've got, let's see, my youngest son and my son there, that his wife, the one that's in the Marine Corps, those 2 are pregnant. So by December of this year, we'll have 8 grandkids between all my kids working together. So I've got to the capacity now where I'm forgetting birthdays because there's becoming so many in the family. So I also served in the Nebraska Air National Guard. So I had a little bit of time active duty in the Air Force, and then I also had 6 years of service to the Nebraska Guard as an imagery interpreter specialist, where I looked at reconnaissance photos and interpreted those for the brass and what all that they were doing. So just a little bit about me, so you have a little better understanding. So of course, right now I'm stationed with the Salvation Army here in Roseville. Oh, something clicked. This part of the Salvation Army is divided, in the United States is divided into 4 territories. And the territory that Minnesota's in is called the Central Territory. And we're in a division called the Northern Division, which encompasses all of North Dakota and all of Minnesota. And just yesterday, my wife and I were visiting in Bismarck, North Dakota, helping the officers there do some things. And so part of my purview, though, is the Twin Cities. And so units here in the 10 county area that makes up the metropolitan area of the Twin Cities reports to me. That I help give them guidance and direction. Of course, what a lot of people don't know is the Salvation Army didn't start in the United States. It was started by William and Catherine Booth in London, and they were Methodist ministers, but really felt a call to minister to the downtrodden in London, and especially those who were caught in prostitution or were alcoholic and abusing things and kind of selling their wares off to try to fund these addictions in their life. So they really wanted to minister to those folks. And so William Booth came up with this motto, soup, soap, and salvation, which still carries on with the Salvation Army today, that we can't really tell people about the good news of Jesus Christ unless they are cleaned up and they've got a full belly. And so we still strive to do that today. And that's part of our mission. Mission is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and to meet human needs in his name without discrimination. And that's our worldwide mission statement. And we continue to utilize that as our primary mission. Here in the Twin Cities, we really try to guard families and individuals from the effects of poverty, providing a safety net of services, assistance, and spiritual care. So what this looks like is internationally, of course, the Salvation Army is in 132 countries officially, but many other countries unofficially. And so I apologize. There must be I must have clicked on something and there's a timer on my slides. So if they're flipping back and forth a little bit, I'm trying to counteract that. So there's other countries like China where the Salvation Army has salvationists that are doing things, but China doesn't recognize the Salvation Army as an entity. But you can see some of the things we're doing around the world there. Lots and lots of things that are going on. There's just tons and tons of programs all throughout the world, and in different ways the Salvation Army is serving folks. Here in the United States, in the year of 2020 at the annual report, which would be part of 2019 and part of 2020, we served almost 31 million people in the United States in some way, which is a huge amount of people. And you can see there, we served 146 million meals through the Salvation Army, which includes EDS, which are disaster services. So if your community got hit by a tornado or flooding or something like that, our teams would go in and help serve the meals and prepare meals for folks. You'd see nationwide, we provided almost 10 million nights of lodging, and we provide permanent or subsidized housing for almost 21,000 people in the country of the United States. And so just huge numbers of things that are going on. And we do that with a relatively small amount of people. So we do have just under 59,000 employees, only just under 3,500 officers, but we really do everything well with a whole bunch of volunteers. So 2.7 million volunteers nationwide helps the Salvation Army do what it does. And so we really depend on our volunteer base to make things happen. So in the Twin Cities, this is what it all kind of looks like. We shelter, there's other agencies that shelter families, but we primarily shelter individuals, but we did help 18 families, but we sheltered 4,430 individuals, which equates to 103,000 nights provided of shelter in the Twin Cities. Homeless prevention, that's helping people with their rent, their mortgage, electrical or electricity payments, all things that would keep them in their home and keep them from getting evicted. In the year 2020, we spent $315,000 doing that, managing all that caseload. You'll know as all of the pandemic restrictions start to fade away, one of the restrictions that we're really worried about locally is the moratorium on evictions. There's a lot of people because of not having a lot of work or having their hours cut back because of the pandemic have fallen really far behind. And so we're really worried about that restriction being ended here pretty soon, that not just locally, but nationwide, there's a lot of talk about how that's going to affect a lot of people. We do have senior subsidized housing down on our Booth Manor in downtown Minneapolis. We have 157 units there, and 165 people live in that facility. 2020, we provided a lot of meals, and a big number there, almost $1.5 million worth of food the Salvation Army gave out in the year of 2020. A lot of that's donated food. A lot of it's purchased food at a lower cost. But the valuation of what we were able to spread to families throughout the Twin Cities comes out to that amount, which is just talks about how much need there is in our communities. And we have something called the Pathway of Hope program, which is really just sprung up in the last year and a half here in the Twin Cities. The Pathway of Hope program is intensive case management that families have to buy into, and our case managers help them to set goals, personal goals that they need to achieve to get to a sustainable future. And so we've had 51 families in that program, and a majority of them are getting close to a positive completion where they don't need to depend on the Salvation Army or other agencies' services. And they're also getting out of needing government help on a continuous basis. And so we still provide long after they've graduated from the program, our case managers continue to check in with the families to make sure they stay on that sustainable course for the future. And it's a great investment, in our Pathway of Hope case managers become the hub of a whole group of agencies to make sure we're all instilling what these families needs, because depending on the goals that they set for themselves, there's a whole bunch of different needs that the Salvation Army can't provide. So you'll see at the bottom of that slide, right now we're collaborating with 207 different agencies around the Twin Cities to really just instill the Pathway of Hope program specifically for families, but we use the case model also for individuals. And it's a great way to get everybody collaborating and investing in a person's life. We also have our Adult Rehabilitation Center here in Minneapolis. That houses specifically men, but we do minister to some ladies there, although the residential part is specifically for men. Those are men seeking treatment to get out of alcohol or other chemical addictions. They had 63 successful graduations, which means somebody was in the program for about 2 years and has become clean and sober and is now moving on with their life. But they maintain a connection there for many years to come to be able to be a mentor to some of the men coming into the facility, but also to help guide them to a new and sustainable future. The capacity is limited. There's a little construction going on there now, but because of COVID, they've decreased the number of people they have staying there, which is usually around 150. And they provided about 20,000 nights of shelter there. You'll know if you go to a store here in the Twin Cities that the Salvation Army runs, there's no cost to these men entering that program. But if you purchase or donate something to one of our thrift stores, you're directly affecting this program. And so you're helping provide this free service to these men that are trying to come out of these alcohol and chemical addictions. And of course, here in the Twin Cities, we depend on our volunteers rather prolifically. And so here you'll see from January to October, we had 46,000 hours of volunteering with the Salvation Army, which is a huge amount. And then of course, in our bell ringing time, we have about 17,000 hours that take place during that time. And every month we have 44 different opportunities for volunteers to engage their community and help their neighbors out through volunteering with the Salvation Army. There's just literally thousands of opportunities that happen. And it's just great. So some of those opportunities are Food Shelf, which are happening in 10 locations all the time, almost every day throughout the Twin Cities. So those opportunities are duplicated just in many, many, many places. And we're still needing more volunteers. The more we have volunteering, the less we can, the more we can take the donated funds and put them directly into people's hands to help them in their current situation. But we really need advisory board members and advisory council members. All of our locations around the Twin Cities have advisory councils. which meet monthly and help guide and direct policy and how they should take care of things, or it helps informs the Salvation Army of trends that are happening in our community. And then our greater advisory board for the entirety of the Twin Cities help us make more strategic plans as we deal with our day-to-day operations. And so we are constantly reevaluating our programs and how we are ministering to people. The Salvation Army is always local. So even though we're an international organization, everything we do is localized. And so we're always assessing the needs of the locations where we have facilities. We build programs to meet those needs, and then we invest in those programs to keep making sure that we are providing everything that's needed within that community and what the community is requesting. And so, as you can see from our stats, the big request in the Twin Cities is sheltering of individuals and food services. So we continue to do those at a high level, but we're constantly, through our advisory boards and advisory councils, reevaluating what we're doing, retooling what we're doing. And of course, we're in communication with local governments and agencies to make sure that we are not duplicating services and providing services at a very high level in a practical way and a cost-effective way. So around the Twin Cities, we have 7 core community centers. Of course, we have the adult ARC, and we have lots of housing programs. The housing programs are going from shelter, overnight shelter, to temporary housing, to supportive housing, to places like Booth Manor, where we have long-term subsidized housing for seniors. So really we're engaging, like at Booth Brown House, where we have older teenagers to young adults that need sheltering or short-term housing situations that they have needs at. So at Booth Brown House, we're serving from about 16-year-olds all the way up to 90-year-olds in sheltering programs throughout the Twin Cities. We have our food shelf and food pantries in 10 locations around the city, and we're just starting in Ramsey County some pop-up food shelves with a recent request for proposal. We also have some plans, once we have enough money, to start a grocery store model of food pantry, specifically in St. Paul, but we got to come up with about $4 to $5 million to get that off the ground. So if anybody wants to write a check today, great. But we're looking at those kind of ways to serve the public with food so that they have complete choice, and that COVID's kept us from doing most of our food pantries function in a choice model where we put different kinds of food out and the families could select what they wanted. COVID kind of restricted that because of potential contamination and such, but that's starting to come back. We figured out new ways to do that, where our volunteers are working with the people that are coming in and selecting the items for them so they still have choice. And all of our food pantries strive to be ethnically considerate of the area in which they're located. So depending on where our food pantry is located, we try to have foods that the local population really desires, so that they have everything that they need and they're accustomed to in their culture. So we have, of course, our homeless prevention. We're constantly helping people with heat share, rent, mortgage, utility assistance, and case management. What has caused you to get to this situation? How can we help better get you out of this situation? So we're constantly having those conversations with individuals and families. And emergency disaster services are constantly happening. Just with the recent Chauvin trial, not only were we serving first responders in Brooklyn Center after the Dante Wright issue, we were also serving first responders in Minneapolis and St. Paul, as well as the National Guard troops, and then also supplying food in Brooklyn Center to the big blue barn next to their high school to help everybody in those situations, and serving meals all throughout that time. And of course, because we're the Salvation Army, supplying emotional and spiritual care as needed. And everybody's familiar with the seasonal services, the Red Kettle out there, which is quite an interesting thing. There's not many nonprofits that have a mechanism for people who receive our services to give back. But the reality is when I've done my own studies in different places I've served, a huge percentage of the people who put money in the Red Kettle at Christmas, not the amount, but just the general giving, are actually people that come and request services from the Salvation Army. So it's a way for them to give back. And usually it's the pocket full of change, you know, after they check out from a register or something like that. But it's still a method of giving back that not many other social service or nonprofits have a way to do that. These are all the social services, but of course we have 7 core community centers throughout the Twin Cities where we also hold our worship services because in the general context, the Salvation Army is part of the evangelical church worldwide. So we have Sunday services, Bible studies, youth programs outside of everything else happening at our 7 core community centers throughout the area. And all those centers also house all of our youth programs and a lot of our senior adult programs and such for people just to come together and meet, which obviously during the pandemic has been very challenging. A lot of that's been taking place virtually, but as restrictions are removed, more and more people are able to get together. So of course, this all means how can anybody help? Well, money is always a good thing, right? To help a nonprofit agency. So anytime that you're able to donate money, we really appreciate it. Kettles at Christmas time, there's mail. You can go to the salvationarmynorth.org website, and up there on the top right-hand corner usually is a donate button, and people can donate through ATM or credit cards. I do want to let people know that we have a big event coming up this September called the Over the Edge event that'll take place at Mall of the America, where the HP building and I think it's the Marriott building down there next to the mall will have rappelling. So if you can get some sponsors to sponsor you to go over the edge and actually rappel down those buildings in September. And I think you need to get $1,000 worth of sponsors to be one of the people that rappel down. So love to see a few of you go over the edge. My wife won't let me, but but I'm working on her about that. But it's always great to donate money. Somewhere between 83 and 87 cents of every, depending on the year, of every dollar donated goes into direct service somehow for the individuals we serve. So at a minimum, our administrative, or at a maximum, our administrative costs are at 17 cents on the dollar, which continues to be consistent nationwide for the Salvation Army. But specifically here, I think in the last fiscal year, we were running about 83 cents on every dollar was going in direct service to people, which is a great percentage as far as nonprofits go. You can also donate tangible items, food, clothing. We have the coat drive every year. I remind folks, as you see a store that might be closing down, or moving or whatever, and they're having one of those sales. And even though it's nice this summer, if there's a store in your area that's closing down and they have a bunch of discounted winter coats or hats or gloves, and you want to really make an impact in a family's life, if you could purchase those things and donate them to the Salvation Army, and then when fall comes around, that helps us supply all those coats and hats and gloves that we give out. We're always looking for toiletries and personal hygiene supplies. Of course, a lot of the individuals that we shelter are in a homeless state. So, and we're trying to get them out of that state. But in the meantime, they need those kind of supplies to help them. And so, we had a huge amount of volunteers during COVID that we would give them some supplies. And while they were home, they would organize the supplies in little packages that we could give out to homeless folks or folks coming into our shelters, which is a great way for them to socially distance, but still help a lot of people out. Of course, at Christmas time, we have our angel trees around where people can donate toys to help with the toy giveaway that we do every year. And in the fall, we always collect school supplies to help area kids. Main collection points are Walmart and Sam's Club, but places like Spire Bank and other places are part of that process too. And you can always donate time. 2 hours of being at a kettle site equals about a $50 donation to the Salvation Army. So we're very thankful for every volunteer, but you can help the volunteer to do food pantry, help in youth programs. We do nursing home visits every year. We visit thousands of people around the Twin Cities that maybe don't have family members or don't get a lot of visits. Even during COVID, we were still trying to work our way into some of these nursing homes of some of our folks who've been vaccinated to minister to them and just give them some personal contact. So there's, you name it, the way that you would like to volunteer, and I guarantee you the Salvation Army can accommodate your time and wanting to volunteer, and you can sign up through our website to do all of that. So with that, as I talked really fast, any questions anybody has?
So if you have a question, if you would please raise your hand or wave it or something like that. Tom.
Scott, how do you identify the people that you serve?
Well, it depends on the program. So, and the funding source we have for it. So a lot of our housing programs are actually funded through HUD that flow through the state of Minnesota to us. So they have certain parameters of who they want us to serve. And so that's part of it. Some of it is the initial contact. We'll give people initially some safety net services. And then if they want more services, we have them meet with a case manager, just try to work out how they found themselves in this situation, what barriers are happening in their life, specifically financial, and see how we can either engage them directly with the Salvation Army or pull in one of our collaborating agencies to help invest in them. So we try to help everybody with the safety net kind of items, like food or shelter, the real quick ways that we can help people. But longer term, we have a more qualifying process. Does that make sense?
We'll do a question from Mary Jo, and then Ed, and then Gayland. So Mary Jo.
Thanks, Deb, and thanks so much, Major Scott. It was great to hear your story and great to hear all the work that Salvation Army is doing. So you put up the slide about where you get your funding sources. Is the bulk of your money from donations from people, like the bell ringing and all that, or do you get government? I mean, you get funding from other levels of government. What percentage would you say? I'm just curious.
Locally here in the Twin Cities, depending on, so if you look at our shelter programs, they would be government funded heavy. But then, so let's say a Harbor Light Center downtown, which right now has 270-ish people located at it. And then the rest of them, we've scattered those out to hotels in the area. So that program's about 75% government funded, and then 25% is mainly the donations that come in at Christmas time, but then we have people who donate money throughout the year. So that would be the structure there. When you look at one of our core community centers, that would be almost about the opposite, about 75% funded from local donations, and then about 25% from government programs and such like that. So it kind of varies per location. But again, we have a lot about in the Twin Cities. Every year we bring in about $10 to $12 million of private donations, and then almost an equal amount of government funding. So it just depends on the location, how it breaks out.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I know you maximize your dollars to coordinate with whoever, wherever the funding source is, that you work together on that. Just another quick question, then I'll let everybody else ask. But how long do you get to be stationed in a place, or do you have some say in it? How long do we get to have you here in Minnesota? Or is it a rotation kind of thing? Or do you get to stay here as long as you want? Or how does that work?
Yeah, you know, I wish I could stay anywhere I wanted as long as I want, but that's not the way it works out. So people retire in other locations and or people have to move on out of the Salvation Army work for other reasons, and that causes some shifts around. But yeah, like I said earlier, my longest appointment was 7 years in Omaha as a divisional youth secretary, but I've also served in Peoria for 5 years, in Bloomington for 5 years, and my last appointment in the Quad Cities was for 3 years. We do get some say in our appointment process, especially when we have kids, because the Salvation Army is very cognizant of, like my daughter had to move from Bloomington, Illinois to Omaha between her freshman and sophomore year. And that was not easy. But that was something we were consulted about, that they really wanted us to move to that appointment. And we did talk to her about it ahead of time, but she's a Scotch-Irish redhead and it was in full blossom when we moved. So yeah, so we do get consulted, but now that all of my kids are gone, it's a lot easier to move us, I would say. But I expect to be everywhere for 7 years. At least that's how I make plans. Doesn't always work out though.
Thank you for that. Thanks for your service.
Amen.
We'll take a question from Ed, and then Galen will be after him.
Yes, thank you. And Scott, thanks for your presentation today. I'm curious with, I believe at the beginning you said that you've got some work going on in China, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, we have some Salvationists doing stuff there under the radar.
Yeah, okay. That was really my question is, given the mission of making good news known, what does that look like in other countries? Because certainly, like you say, there's, what does under the radar look like?
Yeah, well, it's as you've heard, many places have house churches going on in China and stuff. And the reality is the Salvation Armies went around the world on the backs of what we call our soldiers, and that's members of our churches and volunteers. So it's never went any place that the Salvation Army said, oh, we need to start the work in this place. It always starts by some Salvationists who've moved there and started serving people. And then when the work and the services there got to a certain level, then the Salvation Army structure says, oh, we need to assign officers there to help guide it now. And so that's kind of what's happening in China, is that there's Salvationists that are there and trying to do things kind of under the radar. And eventually the hope would be, just like it's happened in other countries, that eventually the hope would be is that the Salvation Army would be recognized by the government as an NGO or something like that, and we'd be able to start services there. But it is very difficult. It took many, many years. Off and on, the Salvation Army has been recognized by Russia or threatened to be kicked out. Same with Pakistan and other places like that. So it just depends on the government's mentality at the time, not just with NGOs, but specifically Christian organizations and how they want to interact with them. And so, yeah, that number of countries we're in varies some years. And then sometimes, like we've seen in our lifetime, Africa will kind of change lines or change names and change governments. So, because we're in a lot of the countries in Africa, but sometimes things happen there that are difficult structural wise for the Salvation Army. So, like an interesting little tidbit, in Africa, in a lot of countries, a company can't own property, only individuals can. And so the Salvation Army facilities there have to do some legal gymnastics, we call it, to make sure that we function well there when staff changes and such. So it can be very difficult to be a worldwide organization under those kind of auspices.
Thank you. Galen.
Yes, thank you, Major, for a great presentation. My question is, the Red Kettle donation program, is that just in the US or is that in all 134 other countries or just some countries? Any idea how widespread that process is throughout the world? Yeah,
it started out in San Francisco, where an officer in the Salvation Army back in the late 1800s, so I think it was 1898, He wanted to make sure that people had a good meal for Christmas. And so he put a kettle out on Fisherman's Wharf and was just asking for people coming in and off the boats for a little donation to make sure he could supply that meal. And that gravitated across the United States, then up to Canada. And now it's in, I think about 80% of the countries around the world do something like that. Now, some of it's just kind of a one-off, kind of a weekend. It's not as prolific as it is in the United States, but all around the world now, that red kettle has become a way to give back.
Very nice. Does anyone else have a question? Well, Scott, we can't thank you enough for this presentation today. It was very interesting. We're so happy that you've joined the club, and we're eager to help out. So let us know when we can be of use.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Thank you very much for having me today to present this.
Nice. So we do make donations to the Rotary Woods and Rain Garden on behalf of our speakers. So we'll be doing that in your honor. So we thank you for being here. Jenny, would you give us a preview of what to expect for next week?
Next week, we have Amanda Brinkman. So Amanda believes that all brands can make a meaningful impact in their community. Amanda is the Chief Brand Officer of Deluxe. And maybe you've heard of the hit TV series, The Small Business Revolution. Hopefully you've heard of that. It's been a really, really inspirational reality show in which Amanda uses her passions and goes to different small towns and really spearheads efforts to revitalize that community around one particular business makeover. And her philosophy is do well by doing good. So it'll be really interesting because this year their small business revolution community is the Twin Cities. So it'll be real interesting.
Well, that's fantastic. I look forward to it. And if anybody has a friend or a coworker that you think might be interested in that topic, feel free to send them an invitation. That's all we have for today. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next week. Thank you, Scott.